Today we're going to be starting Chapter 9, and we're going to be looking at populations again, but this time we're going to focus on human populations. And so we'll be doing two sections. The first one is going to be studying human populations, which is what we're going to talk about today, and we're also going to talk about how population trends have changed over time. So today we're going to specifically look at how the size and growth rate of human population has changed, not just in the last 200 years, even though that's where we're going to focus, but also over a longer period of time. And we're going to talk about what the four properties are that scientists use to predict population sizes. We're also going to talk about how population trends allow scientists to make predictions based on something called age structure. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a video that simulates how population has changed over time. And I'm not going to have sound for this video because I want you to be able to just see what is going on. In this map, what's going to happen is, as it starts to play, there will be on the map white dots that will appear, and each dot represents 1 million people. Down in the lower right corner, there will be pictures, graphics to represent different things that are going on in history. And then over here on the left side, there's going to be a clock that starts with 0 and then goes to 1 AD and 2 AD, and it's going to continue on until it gets to 2030, so you can see kind of a prediction about what scientists believe is happening. So what I want you to pay particular attention to is how these dots change, how they get added to the map. So we've started, and we're now moving up to about 50 AD, and if you look, you can see that dark dots are starting to appear, and most of them, where the largest concentrations are over here in China and India. At this time, the Roman Empire is going on. You see dots, but you notice, even though we're now approaching 250, 300 years AD, you don't see a huge increase. The golden age of India is now going on, and as you can see, every once in a while you see a dot added, but it's not happening very quickly. The Mayan Empire over in Central America is now going on, and we're now approaching just past 500 AD, and there just hasn't been that much change that you can see. Remember, each dot represents 1 million people. Obviously, there were people in the American continent, but we were not aware of how many there were at that time. Now the rise of Islam has begun, and we're now approaching 800 AD. Still not that big of a change. You see a few adding, but not very many. Just keep watching. Now we're in the time when Viking conquests have begun to happen. You notice over here in India and China, you're starting to get a little bit heavier concentrations. We now just crossed 1000 AD. There just hasn't been that much change in the world's population. They still haven't reached 1 billion. The Crusades are now going on. You start to see a few more dots starting to happen over in the European area, over in here. Still higher concentrations in these two areas right here. Now, one of the things you're going to notice at this time in the 1300s, the Black Plague has happened, and notice in Europe, dots are disappearing. About 100 million people on the earth died during the Black Plague. So you got a huge dip in population about that time. We're now approaching 1600. You're going to now start seeing more dots over in the Americas. as that area of the world begins to get settled. Notice, look what's happening over here in China and India. And when we get to 1800, you're going to start noticing something different, because that's when industrialization really began to occur. And now look at the dots. We're now over 1800, 1850, 1900, 1950, 2000, 2030. So that's the prediction as to what scientists believe is going to be happening during those times to our population. So what is going on? So we'll come back to the notes. So this is Roman numeral 1, human population over time. A, demography is the study of populations, specifically humans, and includes the study of several things. Number 1, the study of the historical sizes and makeup of human populations in specific countries. Number 2, making comparisons and predictions regarding populations in different countries. And number 3, the study of the properties that affect population growth. B, demographers group countries with similar population trends into 2 categories. Number 1, developed countries are those with higher incomes, slower population growth, industrial economies, and strong social support systems. And we're going to talk about what those things mean during this chapter. So if we look at this map, the green countries are the ones that have either pretty advanced or definitely advanced economies. Notice North America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, or at least Western Europe, fall into those categories. So they have the characteristics we just mentioned. And in addition, that means slower population growths. The lighter green ones would be Eastern Europe and Northern Asia are in that category. Number 2, developing countries have lower incomes, agricultural-based economies, and rapid population growth. So what scientists see is this pattern over and over and over. So there is some sort of connection going on here to those characteristics. All of the red, and especially in the red countries, the ones that are red in color, is where you see the very rapid population growth. Orange, not quite as bad as the ones in red as far as population growth, but they're still considered developing. C, during 99% of human history, people were hunter-gatherers and were nomadic. This meant that populations stayed small. And we talked about that back at the very beginning of the year when we talked about hunter-gatherers and how things progressed from then. Hunter-gatherers were moving around all the time, following where the food supply was or due to weather. And because of that, they were small populations. Human population just didn't get very big as long as this is what people were doing. So when you look at this diagram, this is showing what happened to the world population. It would be around this time period right here, and about 10,000 BC is when humans begin to move from nomadic to agricultural. So in this area is when that began to happen. And look what happened right down here at the population. Before that, the population was so low that it just about didn't show up on this graph. But once you started with agriculture, the population then began to increase. It was pretty steady, but look what happened as we moved all the way across here. So we're going to talk about each of the other parts of this. Number 1, about 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution began. which allowed people to produce more food and stay in one place. Now remember in Chapter 8 we talked about carrying capacity. Carrying capacity was the maximum number of organisms that could survive in that ecosystem because there was enough resources to go around. So there were enough resources indefinitely to support that many organisms. Well, when agriculture began, it meant that you had a larger carrying capacity in that location because humans could grow their own food and produce more. It meant more could live in that area. Before that, as nomads, the environment could only support a certain number of humans before all the food or resources would be gone. With agriculture, it allowed you to increase the amount of resources. Number 2, being able to grow food instead of having to hunt or gather it meant that there was a greater carrying capacity, like we were just saying. Number 3, since more people could survive, the population began to grow. Now this is just another map of the same thing, but what I wanted you to see right here, it shows where the agricultural revolution is, and before that we had hunter-gatherers. And as you can see, there were many other eras that happened after that, but here's what's going on. Look down here at this line at the bottom. This is the population growth. D, beginning in the 1800s, human population began to grow rapidly for several reasons. Number 1, increase in food production due to industrialization. The more food you can produce on the same piece of ground, the more people that can survive because of it. So once we began to go with industrialization, what we did was greatly increase the yield or the amount of food you could produce on 1 acre of land. Number 2, improvements in hygiene. In other words, by improving hygiene, it meant that there was less chance of disease, and that meant that people lived longer. Number 3, longer life expectancy due to improved medical care and nutrition. Once you had various things going on in the medical field, it meant people could live longer. Once people understood how nutrition affected them, they could take steps to make sure they got the proper nutrition. All of those led to a reduction in disease and longer lives. All right, so now we're beginning in this area right here. So now we have the industrial era, and then look what began to happen to the population during that time period, right here. E, human population began to experience exponential growth, meaning that the population doubled in shorter and shorter periods of time. So that's what this graph is showing you, is that it took less and less time to double the population. This little gap right here is where the plague, the Black Death, happened, and you can see it dropped the population enough that you see it on this graph. But once the world recovered from that, it took about 150 years for population to get back to where it was before the plague had happened. Over 100 million people died during that time. But then look what began to occur with the population. F, human population growth is now in the steepest part of the J-curve graph. So this is the J-curve graph, and we're now in the steepest part of the graph right here. G, very recently, population growth rates have begun to slow in some parts of the world due to dropping birth rates. H, demographers use 4 properties of populations to predict how they might change. Number 1, age structure. So this is the first property that we're going to talk about. Age structure is the distribution of ages in a population at a particular time, and they have certain types of graphs they use to show that. For example, if the population has many more young people than older people, population will likely increase due to the young people growing up and having children. Age structure can be graphed in a population pyramid as shown in the figure on the right. So, if you look at this, there are three different shapes these graphs can have. Each of them means something different, but each of them allow scientists to make predictions. So, if a country's age structure population is graphed, then it will be close to one of these three shapes, and each shape means something different as far as what may happen in the future. By graphing the current age structure of a population, demographers can predict what will likely happen to the size of the population in the future. Alright, so let's talk about what each of these mean. In this one on the far left, what I want you to notice is at the bottom it's showing the percentage of the population in a particular age group. And they're divided by females and males. So on this side it's showing up to 10% of the females, and on this side it shows up to 10% of the males. Over here on this side right here it's showing age groups. So you have ages 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, all the way up to 80 plus. And so what they're showing, each of these colored bars shows what percentage of this particular country's population falls into that age range. So for instance, this is Kenya in Africa. Almost 10% of the population is females ages 0 to 4 and males ages 0 to 4, another 10%. So 20% of their population is under the age of 5. The next group is ages 5 to 7, and 9, and you can see it's a little bit smaller, but look at the trend. As you get up close to the top, there are very few people that are above age 60 up here. So what this shows is that most of their population are very young. What that means is that there's probably going to be rapid growth in the future, because all of these younger people that grow up are going to then have children. So you're going to see rapid population growth. In this particular one in the middle, what it's showing, it's the same exact thing, but look at the shape. This is in the United States. There is a bulge of ages right here. This is people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Notice in that age group, it is a larger population than the younger population. What this indicates, there's also a larger group of people that are older than what you see in Kenya. But what it's showing is that because you have a smaller group right here in the younger age range, that you're not going to have as much population growth. You still will have population growth, but it's going to be slow. So if scientists graphed the population of a country and they got this shape, that would tell them there's going to be slow population growth. Now this shape is showing negative population growth. Look how much smaller the younger people are, the numbers, than everything else. This shows a country, this is Germany, and it's showing a country whose population is actually beginning to decrease. So when a scientist graphs the population of a country based on what the shape of the graph is, which one of these that they get, that helps them predict what's going to happen with the population in the future. Number 2, survivorship. Survivorship is the percentage of members of a group that are likely to survive to any given age. When you graph the information, it helps to predict what will happen to the population in the future. Now, here's what this graph is showing. All right, over here on the side is the number of survivors, and it's up to 1,000. Down on the bottom is what percentage of the lifespan. So if the lifespan was 50 years, for instance, the expected lifespan. What this is showing on this line is that you got lots of people that are going to survive to a short part of the lifespan, but as you get older, only a few people are surviving to 50% of the lifespan, 25 in other words, and very few make it all the way to the life expectancy, which was 50. So in this case, you got a population that aren't going to live very long. But look at this one, the purple line up here. Lots and lots of people are living almost to 100% of whatever the life expectancy is. That's going to make a difference in the size of your population. This line shows that you got more people living longer, so you're going to have more people alive at the same time, which is an increase in population. Number 3, fertility rates. Fertility rate is the number of babies born each year per 1,000 women in a population. The total fertility rate is the average number of children a woman gives birth to in her lifetime. Now, here's how that can make a difference. In the United States, the average number of children born to a woman is 1 point something. No, nobody's having part of a child. What it means is that when you take the average number of children that each woman has, that's what you end up with as an average. But here's what's important about that. If it's less than 2, that means that there are being less children born, and there's not enough being born to replace the people that are there now. If you have someone in a country who the average birth rate is 5, then look at what that means. Every woman is having an average of 5 children, so that's going to greatly increase the population. Number 4, migration. Populations can grow due to the immigration of individuals into that area. Now, this is one of the reasons why the United States is still growing. The movement of individuals between areas is called migration. Movement into an area is called immigration with an I, while movement away from an area is called immigration with an E. Here's how I remember it. E is the first letter in exit and the first letter in immigration. So when people are exiting, then they're immigration with an E. This map is showing migration trends that are going on right now in the world. If it is a blue country, that means that they have more people moving in than moving out. And so North America is one of those, and Europe. And notice what it's showing you. Countries that have higher levels of industrialization are the countries where people are moving into. On the other hand, the ones in brown are the countries that more people are moving out of than are moving into. And the green ones are the ones where it's kind of even, it's sort of balanced. And that's all for today.